Good afternoon to you. It's 3:06 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, Daniel Turner was at Madison Square Garden last night. We will ask him how that massive sold-out event went as President Trump rounds the corner, and we're now into the final week of this election. And then Reagan Reese joins us at 4 o'clock, White House correspondent for the Daily Caller. What will the left do if Trump wins? Reagan has explored all of the many scary options. She'll tell us what she's learned. And Doug Blair is here at 5 o'clock, polling analyst. We'll get his thoughts on the state of the race. You can join us at 888-630-9625. 888-630-WMAL. Over on NBC, they were assessing the state of the race this weekend. Here's what Steve Kornacki had to say.
One thing we have noticed in the last couple of days, this is not all of the polls that are out there now, but we have seen a number, 4 in the last 4 days, that have shown very small, but in the context of this close race, potentially meaningful movement in Trump's direction. I don't want to overstate it, but at the same time, it's hard to ignore these 4. The CNBC poll came out the other day, has Trump ahead by 2. The Wall Street Journal poll, Trump ahead by 3. These are national numbers. Siena and the New York Times, a tied race. CNN, a tied race. The significance here is broader movement. Again, we're seeing in Trump's direction.
Movement in Trump's direction. It keeps inching in his direction. In a world where they tell us every vote is basically already set, it's interesting that he keeps picking up more. And that full head of steam has made the Kamala Harris campaign as insane as it possibly can get, I think. I hope, anyway. My buddy David Strom over at Hot Air writes today, as Trump peaks, Democrats go insane. Yeah, they're losing it. They're losing it. And it's not hard to see why. Kamala Harris was asked yesterday about the internal polling at her campaign, and here is the answer she gave. Very evasive.
Madam Vice President, can you give us a sense of your internal polling at the campaign and how that is making or influencing your decisions on what to do over the next 9 days?
So, to be very frank with you, my internal polling is my instinct. I let the campaign people deal with all that other stuff.
Wait, what does that mean? What does that mean? To be clear, my internal polling is my instinct. What? You're the nominee for a major party presidential campaign. You have internal polling. What do your internal polls tell you? Apparently, they're hiding them from Kamala, or she's once again lying to you.
Let the campaign people deal with all that other stuff. And I am responding to what I'm seeing. I mean, just 2 nights ago, we had 30,000 people show up. I think it was actually more than 30,000 people, with an incredible amount of enthusiasm. If you see the people showing up last night, every event that we do, and the feeling is one of energy and excitement. What I love about the folks who are showing up is it's every walk of who we are as a country and as Americans.
Speaking of walking, did you see the lefties walking out of Kamala Harris's Houston event on Friday? Kamala Harris held a rally in Houston, and Beyonce showed up. So that came true. That part came true. But guess what she didn't do? She didn't perform. So the Kamala Harris campaign had started this chatter that, Beyonce's going to perform on Friday. And so a bunch of people showed up, not for Kamala Harris, but because they wanted a Beyonce concert. And so Beyonce walked up on stage, gave a couple of seconds of, political speak. She just gave her opinion and why you have to vote for Kamala, et cetera, et cetera. And then she walked off stage. There was no concert. And then people were walking out. There's video footage of pointing at the aisles as people went for the doors. As soon as Beyonce walked off the stage, they were done. They were out. It was a total disaster, this thing on Friday. Oh, and did you see the abortion people? They brought up a bunch of abortionists in white coats on stage, a whole crew of them, like a gang of abortionists were all on stage. They were throwing their gang signs and everything. And they were up there, and while they were talking, they had a lead abortionist, a guy who's in a white doctor's coat, and he was saying something. And there was a person in the crowd who had a medical emergency in the midst of all of this. And so what you have is A bunch of people who are dressed up like they're doctors standing on stage, a crowd member undergoing a medical emergency. People in the crowd start chanting, medic, medic, medic. And all of these abortionists, they don't have any useful skills. So they just stand up there staring into the crowd. Save a life? That's not my business.
Becoming ill and dying. Nationwide, I think someone needs some medical assistance over here.
You're the doctor. It'd be like if somebody in a white doctor's coat and a stethoscope stood up on your flight and they turned around and they said, "Is there a doctor on board? There's someone here having a medical emergency." Well, you're dressed like one. Is that a Halloween costume? Oh, what a mess. What a mess. Man, oh, man. So, as I mentioned, there's a real difference between these two campaigns. One has energy. The other is desperate for some. And they're angry that the other has energy. So the Kamala Harris campaign has resorted to the same thing the left always does, which is just grotesque bigotry. We hate our political opponents. They're not just deplorable. No, we've escalated from deplorable to full-blown Nazis. You are Nazis. This is the way the left is treating the right. And they're angry that President Trump they're just angry that Trump's winning. That's what they're angry about. But I'm sure James Carville came up with this. This is the kind of thing, and I'm pretty certain he was the one who was talking about it. Carville was one of the Democrats who was like, well, they had a rally back in 1939. They had a Nazi rally down at Madison Square Garden. So it's basically a Nazi rally. It's a Nazi rally. They're doing it at Madison Square Garden. Why would Trump want to rally at Madison Square Garden? Just quick. Anyone? Well, it could be it's one of the most famous venues on planet Earth. We could start there. That could be a reason. 2, it could be that he is from New York. He was born and raised, came up, made his fortune, succeeded, became wildly famous in New York City. So it might make sense that he'd want to do it in Madison Square Garden. 3, he wants to draw national attention to this, and he's holding a rally like this. It's a great place to do it. I've seen some people questioning the wisdom of, why is he campaigning in New York? He can't win New York. And Trump, of course, is saying he can win every state he wants to. And it would be one of the shocks of the evening. If he wins New York, this is the biggest landslide we'll have ever seen. I'm including Ronald Reagan's win in that. It'd be massive, massive. But he wants to hold it in Madison Square Garden. So the left spent the whole last week and then all the way through today saying, it's just like that Nazi rally in 1939. Quick, who could have remembered that there was a Nazi rally there in 1939? They pulled that out of the deep recesses of their nonsense. And what a weird thing to say. How many other events have taken place at Madison Square Garden? Didn't Billy Joel play a concert there every month for like 100 months? For a very long time. He said, I'll keep doing it until it's not sold out. It was never not sold out. It was consistently sold out. Billy Joel played there for a very long time. Why weren't they saying Trump was just like a Billy Joel concert? Why didn't they say he's exactly like a Rangers game? He's just like the New York Knicks. Look at him at Madison Square Garden. He's just like Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He's just like Hoover. He's just like JFK. He's just like Marilyn Monroe singing Happy Birthday, Mr. President to John F. Kennedy in Madison Square Garden. Here's a point, though, I should make. That Madison Square Garden in which Marilyn Monroe sang to JFK was not even the same building. That building was not put up until the 1960s. It was, 1968. The building that Trump just rallied in was built in 1968. There were 4 different buildings that were known as Madison Square Garden, named thusly because they were originally built on Madison Square and then eventually got moved around. So it's not even the same building, but it's just like the Nazi rally that was held there in 1939. The Nazis, and also in 1939, this is... What you're talking about is rank and file Democrats got together and held a Nazi rally. Like this, Everything about this is a perfect inversion of history and just a vicious, vicious slander. And it extended to the DNC's behavior this weekend, too. The Democrat National Committee used their resources, the billions that they've taken in from their corrupt donors, to project digital messages onto the side of Madison Square Garden's exterior. CBS reports DNC projects message tying Trump to Hitler on Madison Square Garden during rally. Trump praised Hitler, it says. A sign on the side of the building. Just a lie. We're just gonna lie at the end of this race. We're gonna tell the most vicious possible lies. We're gonna say Trump's like Hitler. Meanwhile, the people who actually went to this thing, who actually attended this event, were about as lovely as you could possibly find them. Lovely people. And there's a video here. This woman who was an attendee, her name is Michelle Maxwell. She was an attendee, and she spoke to a couple Trump supporters, and they're all minorities, all of them. And they were joking about the left's treatment of them. Listen to this.
Hey, we heard that Nazis were supposed to be here. That's what Hillary Clinton said, so we out here to see. Have you seen the Nazi today?
We are the Nazi party. Yes.
Yeah.
No,
I'm
white though.
I'm the
Nazi right here, yes.
Yeah.
Dominican Nazi.
Dominican Nazi.
Dominican, Latina, black.
Latina Nazi. We got...
Oh, I'm the black Nazi.
Black Nazi.
The biggest blackest Nazi you ever seen in your life.
I'm the Jewish Nazi. The Jewish Nazi. I'm the cool Nazi. I'm the white Nazi. I'm Mr. Cool himself. We out here, baby.
He's the white Nazi.
He's the white Nazi.
The guy who says he's the white Nazi, he's holding up an Israeli flag.
We're all united here to make Donald J. Trump the 47th president of the United States.
And they're wearing MAGA hats, American flags, carrying Israeli flags. The two black dudes in the video have these big MAGA hats on. It's just what they're saying is what you and I are saying. This is a disgusting, disgusting slander, and we're going to mock you for making it. We're going to mock you for making it. Now, President Trump himself spoke at this Madison Square Garden extravaganza, where they had people from all walks of life. I know the press is all obsessed with Tony Hinchcliffe, the comedian who is an actual famous comedian who supports Trump, it turns out. I didn't know he supported Trump, but he showed up last night. He says he supported Trump. He's an insult comic. So by the end of the night, he had insulted everyone. And now all the news headlines are about that. He insulted Puerto Rico. He's an insult comic, you idiots. And so if he had done that in any other venue, any other stage, they don't bother. They're not picking on him. They don't care. They thought he was one of them. And then as soon as he comes out, he's like, I'm for Trump. And then he tells insulting jokes. Now it's, well, that defines the whole rally. Everything. Oh, really? That defines the whole rally? Okay. So you had an abortion van at the DNC. You did. And you killed, I don't know, I forget how many. They were bragging about the dozens of children whose lives were extinguished outside the DNC. So am I safe to say that the entire event was a human sacrifice session? Would that be a good summary of the entire Democrat National Convention? I'll just let you noodle on that. But President Trump himself spoke. And listen to this. Who does this sound like? Anybody from 1939?
After all we have been through together, we stand on the verge of the 4 greatest years in the history of the USA. With your help from now until Election Day, we will restore America's promise. We will put America first, and we will take back the nation that we all love. We bleed the same blood, we share the same home, and we salute the same great American flag.
Guy sounds exactly like Hitler.
We are one people, one family, and one glorious nation under God. We will never give in, we will never give up, we will never, ever back down, and we will never, ever, ever, ever surrender. Together we will fight, 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 and we will win, win, win. We're going to win, win, win.
A sold-out crowd at Madison Square Garden. All right, coming up, I've got more from that, more from you and Daniel Turner, who was there.
Vince, how are you doing?
I'm good, Andy. What's on your mind, sir?
I really enjoyed the rally yesterday. I enjoyed the people on the line, how well behaved they were, how smoothly it went as they walked into the Madison Square Garden, which is as cavernous is a good word to use for that place.
Yeah.
But then who made the decision to hire an insult comic?
Mm-hmm.
When Mr. Trump, the one thing the Democrats take issue with him is how he insults minorities. And that's what the comic did. It just took all the wind out of my sails.
Oh, well, you shouldn't have the wind taken out of your sails by an insult comic. Tony Hinchcliffe
well, you know what
exists. And so my suspicion, I don't have any good inside intel on this. My suspicion is that Tony Hinchcliffe is friends with Joe Rogan, and maybe Rogan suggested him to Trump when they were together on Friday, and Trump said, "Sure, whatever." Like Trump's easygoing enough that that's the kind of thing that might happen. But again, to kind of your point, like about Trump, Trump's an insult comic on his own. He really doesn't need another insult comic there in order to achieve that particular checkbox.
Say people are garbage. No, not right.
Yeah, he's a comedian, though. And that's right. So people are getting their panties in a bunch for no reason, is my point. I think, and the media is clinging to it because they're clinging to literally anything in their effort to try and take Trump down. It's also silly, but very real consequences. Very real consequences if the press has its way. Andy, thank you. I appreciate the call. Look. I'll be honest with you. I've seen all these clips of Tony Hinchcliffe for a long time because he runs a comedy show, so he's all these like famous people come in all the time. And I never once was like, that guy Tony's really funny. I never thought that. But the overwrought hysteria, please grow up. Are you adults or what? Come on. It's like our country needs to find its sense of humor again. All right, coming up, Daniel Turner was in the room. We'll find out how scandalized he was as he saw a rally that was defined by, I think, a lot of wholesome love for this country. Hey, good afternoon to you. 3:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on the program, Reagan Reese will be here, White House correspondent for the Daily Caller at 4 o'clock. We'll chat about what the left's plans are if Trump wins this thing. And then Doug Blair is here at 5 o'clock. He'll give us a closer look at the polling. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Lots of people speaking at Madison Square Garden last night, among them Tulsi Gabbard.
Here is the choice that we have. A vote for Kamala Harris is a vote for Dick Cheney, and it's a vote for war, more war, likely World War III and nuclear war.
You know who else held a rally at Madison Square Garden? Dick Cheney back in 2004. Liz Cheney's in photos rallying at Madison Square Garden like a Nazi. Here's Tucker Carlson last night.
You know what the big lie is? The big lie is that they're impressive. That's what the big lie is. That the people in charge have somehow earned the right to rule over you, and they haven't. And you know that. These are the single most useless people in the United States. They have no skills whatsoever. They've got 3/4 of the money, and they didn't earn it. They set up a system precisely for the purpose of awarding themselves wealth and power when it's undeserved. You look at Liz Cheney and you ask yourself honestly, what skill could she possibly have that allowed her to send hundreds of thousands of people to their deaths? Did she earn that? I don't think she did. No fair system would make Liz Cheney powerful. No fair system would make Larry Fink rich. No fair system would elevate someone like Kamala Harris to a presidential nomination. She's never been accused of doing anything useful. She has precisely no achievements. She's a nominee without getting a single vote.
Elon Musk also speaking last night.
America's just not just going to be great. America is going to reach heights that it has never seen before. The future is going to be amazing.
That's funny.
Now,
Is that Elon? Yeah.
you guys are awesome. Honestly, this is like...
You think Elon should just arrive on stage in like an Iron Man suit, like hovering or something? Like just fly onto the stage? If he could, he would, I assure you. And finally, before we get to our next guest, Hulkamania.
You know something? Usually when I'm in Madison Square Garden, I'm body slamming giants. I'm winning world heavyweight titles, and I'm cracking people over the heads with steel chairs.
Kamala would never.
And the energy in Madison Square Garden is off the Richter scale. But today, Trumpomaniacs, the energy in here is something like I've never felt. The energy of all these Trumpomaniacs is the most powerful force in the universe. And today, this is Donald Trump's house, brother.
Yeah. All right, my next guest ripped his shirt off in solidarity. Daniel Turner is here. He's a founder and executive director of Power the Future. He was in Madison Square Garden last night. Daniel, good to have you back with us.
Donovan, it's great to be on with you. Thank you.
How was that? What was that like, being there in Madison Square Garden, sold-out crowd?
It was tremendous. For reference, I was born and raised in New York City. I've been to Madison Square Garden a number of times for everything from Knicks games, St. John's basketball, concerts, etc. So to be in Madison Square Garden is always great. To be there with that kind of atmosphere and enthusiasm. Sometimes when you grow up in a blue state and you're a conservative, you always feel lost. Right? None of your neighbors support your values. No one has a Trump sign or a Reagan sign on their lawn back in the day. Right? You're kind of on your own. So I think for MAGA New Yorkers, I think for Republican New Yorkers to gather in that size of a crowd and know that they aren't alone, I think just gave people a lot of energy.
Yeah. Did you get the impression that a lot of the crowd was from New York, or was this a crowd of people who wanted to travel from around the country? Who was there last night?
Oh, no, these were New Yorkers. Yeah, and that's why I know obviously there's a lot of knocks over Kill Tony's jokes in the audience. I got to tell you, people thought he was hysterical. The part of the crowd maybe wasn't on TV, which was President Trump in the bigger speeches. Some of the smaller, lesser-known talking heads, some F-bombs, some vulgarity, but it's right. It was a New York crowd with New York jokes, with New York comedy, with New York language, and the people there just felt like it really was special. And Donald Trump it kind of had to it.
Okay, you're breaking up a little bit, so I'm hoping that doesn't sustain. But you made the point I think you made pretty well is that this is like a New York crowd. They really enjoyed it. Everybody had a good time. But the media, as you know, is crapping all over this thing. Daniel Turner. And it feels to me like they might have a rooting interest. That's my suspicion.
You think so? A little bit? I think the media wrote their stories before the rally even began. And if it was not Kill Tony's jokes or anything else, they would have come out with the same diatribe, the same it's racist, the same it's whatever. The media had that story written before the rally even began.
Yes. Well, it's for sure. And in fact, they ran a number of headlines before the rally even took place saying this has echoes of a 1939 Nazi rally at Madison Square Garden. And as I explained at the top of the show, first of all, it's not even the same building. The current iteration of Madison Square Garden was built in 1968. Secondly, so you picked that event out of all of the tens of thousands of events that have been held at Madison Square Garden? Why not a Billy Joel concert? Why not a Rangers game? Why not a Knicks game? Why not Hoover? Why not Roosevelt? Why not JFK, Marilyn Monroe? Nothing. It was literally, it's just like the Nazis in 1939, Daniel.
Yeah, and they're feeling really desperate at this point. You look at, Al Sharpton said it was racist. Hillary Clinton said it was sexist. It's the same people saying the same things about us, about Trump, that they've said now for 10 years, for us for much longer, for conservatives much longer. But I think it feels really stale. And Tucker Carlson had a great speech, but he had one of, I think, my favorite lines of the night that I'm going to have to paraphrase. But he said something like, he has great respect and gratitude for President Trump because he gave us permission to have to stop pretending about lies are true, right? He gave us permission to acknowledge the fact that, everything you've said about us is a bunch of lies and we don't believe you anymore. We don't have to pretend that because you're the New York Times or because you're with the Brookings Institute that you're smarter or your ideas are better. And the crowd approached that, right? I'm sure there were a lot of hardworking people there who stood long time in line to get to that rally. There probably weren't, boatloads of PhDs in the crowd, but they're the people that make the city run. And they were on stage last night. They were there. They were the front and center last night.
Yeah, that's true. Tucker's point is well taken, which is that President Trump emboldened normal people to tell the truth without shame, and a lot more people are doing that now. So one of the things that we were on guard for was lefty violence, which unfortunately is a trend when it comes to well-publicized Trump events. But it sounds like things actually went pretty well at Madison Square Garden. In fact, there were lots of people outside of the arena who never could get in. They tried to, they couldn't, meaning they were Trump supporters who wanted to get in. But we didn't hear much about lefty violence, Daniel. Did you take any lessons from that?
No, I thought it was, very typical of New York, which, is a tough and rough and tumble kind of city.
Yeah.
But for the most part, New Yorkers are very, very respectful people. They stand in line and wait their turn when the train pulls up, right? They don't cut to get on first at the bus stop, and if they do, they're put in their place. There were some leftists outside trying to agitate. They had the microphones and they were screaming things, but New Yorkers just walked past them because there's usually one crazy person in New York screaming things at you, and it's no big deal. So I thought it was great. I've seen more violence after a Knicks game than I have at the rally last night. And that's because the people who were there really wanted to be there. And for the New Yorkers who didn't want to see Trump have learned, like most adults, just don't go. Just don't go to the rally if you don't want to go. And you know what? It's not a problem.
I also get the impression that the NYPD was not interested in suffering foolishness when outside that Trump rally. My read on them is that a lot of these guys are Trump supporters.
Yeah. And you could tell that, they obviously can't say anything. They are very respectful of their uniform and their duty. But a lot of thank you to the cops, a lot of thank you to the men and women in first responders who were there lining the streets, and a lot of cheers of like Trump fans, go Trump, and you would just see nods and smiles. And I feel like the first responders of New York and the law enforcement, let me rephrase it as I sound like a New Yorker, the law enforcement, they really felt like they were among friends.
So, Daniel Turner, let me pull this now back to 30,000 feet. We're 8 days away from the election. This is a very big one. Everyone knows it instinctively that this is important for the very existence of the country and what our country looks like going into the future. As you assess the stakes today, what do you think they are? What do you think this election is really about?
Well, I make everything about energy because that's my heart and soul, and that's my organization and what I started, Power of the Future. And without energy, you can't do anything. I was just watching Liz Truss, the former PM of the United Kingdom, was on TV on Fox, and she was talking about how England has now the highest energy prices of any developed country, and they have the fastest exodus of millionaire class leaving the country. And she talked about energy, and I thought, there's a lot of issues at stake. Obviously immigration, obviously crime. There are cultural issues that Kamala Harris is terrible on. But at the foundation of everything, of our economy, of our national security, of world peace, it's always going to be energy. And we've had almost 4 years of Biden-Harris putting in place their energy plan, and it hasn't worked. And I don't know when it was supposed to work, right? We've seen wars break out. We've seen eggs cost $4 a dozen, and we're told, like, this is the new normal. When does the good part of their green agenda start to kick in?
Yes.
And that's what I think is on the line. If we can return to a prosperous, energy-rich country, prices will come down. Prices will stabilize. When people have money, they're less angry and they're less nervous and they're less in debt. And that's bad for credit card companies, but it's great for families. And when people have surplus cash, they buy things. So energy is everything.
President Trump said in a number of interviews recently that he would like to cut the cost of fuel in half in the first 12 months that he's in office. He's obviously very pro-American energy. Do you think that's achievable? I've seen a lot of naysaying from the lefty media who ran fact checks on the hypothetical. They're saying that's not even possible. It can't be done. You're not going to be able to mount up energy production that quickly. What do you think is achievable, Daniel Turner?
I think it is achievable. It will require tremendous political muscle. And I think President Trump not only is capable of it, but I think he's eager to flex those political muscles. And what I mean by that is you're going to have to get permitting done fast. You're going to have to get pipelines built fast. And what slows down the energy industry all the time are these activist green groups, a lot of them funded by Russia and China, that drag us into the courts, that stop every time you want to drill, every time you want to lay down a pipeline. All of New England, we're heading into winter again, and all of New England is going to suffer again because they still can't finish pipelines to Pennsylvania for natural gas. And there's no solution on the table. The solution is, we got to figure out wind and solar, but that's not going to help your grandmother in Vermont this winter. So I think it's definitely capable, but you got to have some political muscle behind it. And maybe first time around, President Trump abided by the D.C. mantra like a lot of politicians do. This time, I think President Trump's going to come in a little bit more like a businessman and get stuff done quickly.
Right, and when you have assurances that energy will be delivered in the years to come, that typically has the impact of lowering the cost of energy, just knowing that with confidence, right?
Oh, it does, and that's why oil prices, even though they're down a little bit today, I think they're around $67 a barrel, that's still around $20 more expensive than historical averages, but they are down. But the reason why oil is still pretty high is because oil prices are also a futures-looking commodity, and the industry knows that we don't have a bright future. The Biden-Harris administration has bragged that they've given the fewest amount of leases in 80 years. So, yes, we have very high record production today, but those wells were drilled 7, 6, 7, 8 years ago.
Right.
So there's not a lot of hope in tomorrow. And that's why energy prices are still high. So you're absolutely right. If the market sees that we have a bright future, prices will drop immediately, and that will be great for the American people.
Yeah, and I know this is your interest. It also is President Trump's, because every interview I see him do, it's basically the number one item he brings up, which is really important. Daniel Turner with Power the Future and fresh out of Madison Square Garden. Sir, nice to chat with you today. All right, let me take a phone call. I've got Chris calling in from Marshall, line 8. Hello, Chris. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, good afternoon, Vince. It's always a pleasure. Listen, I saw this video of this woman going hysterical at the Kamala rally because Beyonce wouldn't sing to them. And she's bent down and she's screaming at a toddler, literally a toddler in a stroller. And, she just lost her composure, I guess.
I saw this video. It's like a white lady screaming in the face of a toddler, literally sitting in a little stroller, and a black woman jumps in. A black woman jumps in and grabs her, and she's like, "What are you doing? Why are you yelling in a child's face?" She pulls her back.
Get a hold of yourself. I had opportunity to spend time with a new friend who wrote a book. She's a refugee from the left, and it's called Deprogramming Democrats. And she talks about how to approach the left and try to get them to challenge their worldview. But one of the things she said, her name's Lisa Ekman, and she, I met with her, and she, like many others, I've met with several people, Asra Nomani among them, who are refugees from the left. And one unifying thing they say is, whenever I'm around a bunch of conservatives, I'm always overwhelmed at how welcomed I am and how warm and how loved I feel. How do we get that narrative across to other people? I remember when when Saddam Hussein was being taken down, the army would go in and capture these soldiers, and they said, "Don't eat us, don't eat us, don't eat us," because they had been told that the American soldiers were cannibals, literally.
Well, maybe we're not being served well by the media companies and social media companies who try and keep everybody isolated, living in a bubble, in an echo chamber, and completely away from anybody with a countervailing viewpoint. Maybe we're not well served by that. Maybe the town square needs to be reinvigorated. Maybe conversations need to happen. And when someone in your life is unbalanced, you don't affirm their disorder. You help bring order to their lives. Hold on. Coming up, Reagan Reese from the Daily Caller.